Welcome back to the Mason and Remy No Frequency podcast. I'm Mason.
And I'm Remy. So
I don't know if we've said the name No Frequency podcast this entire time, except for like in the first episode, maybe. But hey, you know what? We're doing great. We appreciate everybody that's been checking out all the episodes. Super fun to go down memory lane. Super fun to have all of this like emotion coming back as we remember these moments here and there. In this episode, well, it's right after I got fired. That's what we covered in the last one. I got let go from our second run in St. Louis doing radio on a country station again. And this was post-pandemic, so there was a lot of stuff that had happened. Also have some notes I want to go over from some things I realized after listening to some old episodes. So like, what's that part in the newspaper? Gosh, I'm dating myself already. Where they used to go, hey, remember that thing last week? Sorry, we said that wrong.
Oh yeah. I don't know what you're talking. I know what you're
called.
talking about, but I don't remember what it was called.
So I'll explain a couple of things. But what happened after I left Mason and Remy? What did Remy experience after I was gone, and what did I do for the 3 years between then and now? How did we end up back here? That might be in a future episode, but it all had to start when I thought Mason and Remy ended in 2021, which was when I was let go. So this episode will cover kind of the time between my leaving the show up to about the time Remy ended his run. And how did it go when there was no Mason but Remy, and the new show and all of that? We'll talk about it in this episode. First, I want to make a couple of, notes I want to share. I may have downplayed how much I was losing my mind in Chicago and St. Louis, and likely prior to that as well. I was not very stable. But in like 2021, in particular, I'd never felt so alone. And I had never felt so beaten up by my own mistakes. I had convinced myself I was pretty terrible and shouldn't and couldn't be doing this anymore. So when I said, I think I was suggesting like Kasey, Remy, and Mason, like, take me out of the equation. I'll be your producer. This is how terrible like a female-led morning show would be great right now. You know what I mean? Like, I'm on board for this. I'm willing to like dive under that bus to make this thing continue to work. But I had lost my mind. So I don't want anybody definitely like watching this and going, he's not talking about, because I want to clearly state my second note. I'm pretty sure I'm the majority of the reason for a lot of things went wrong on our run. I'm not saying that we all aren't to blame in some way, shape, or form, but how I reacted, how I performed after, I made it hard to exist in those times. And I touched on in an episode about how my parents used to yell when I was a kid. So that's all I knew. That's how I handled things. It wasn't right. I remember during my last run in St. Louis, it was brought to my attention that I have resting bitch face. I did not realize this, but years later, like I see it now when I look in the mirror as I get older, right? Like I start to see, this doesn't look like a happy guy. And I am normally a happy person, but I was in meetings and somebody said, Mason, the look on your face doesn't look like you're very happy about this. And I was like, what? No. And I realized then, like, oh, I look like an old white guy. I get it. Like, I understand how you may not be able to approach me or look at me and think, he doesn't want to talk. Partially by design, but also no, I'm open to it. And I apologize for that. And I also want to apologize to anybody still working in the radio business. As I said, some stuff like the writing's on the wall. It may not be applicable to you. I would hope that your company values you more and more. But even this is something that Remy had mentioned, and this is maybe a good place to bring this in. Cuts are always happening. What did you say just before we started? There was like a number you shared.
Just within the last 7 episodes of us recording this, there's at least been 2 cuts at 2 separate radio companies. So I received texts from a couple of people who were like, so what's life like after radio? And it's so hard for me to be like, hey, you should get back in, because I can't say that anymore. But yeah, 2 different cuts in the last 7 weeks at 2 different companies. So
meanwhile, by the way, I think I saw on social media, they're also giving away trips to employees for stuff. I don't understand how any of that works, but like one day you're filing for bankruptcy, the next day, hey, everybody here gets a bonus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's wild. I mean, we had kind of discussed this off the podcast as well, but like working for a larger organization, you can see where this might not look good or this might not be the best decision. But I always remember all these big gatherings that we would have, parties or whatever, company parties, things which kind of diminished over the years. But like,
Mhm.
you just cut 15 people on staff and we're gonna go party now? We're gonna go like have a little shindig? Like that, I don't know. Just
You're just supposed to act like it didn't happen, or
yeah,
just, you know what, somebody would go, "Well, you know what? I remember hearing this. You should be lucky you got a job. You know, there are folks who don't have a job." Like, what a mentality.
yeah,
Oh my goodness. So, like another example too is that bankruptcy thing. Like, remember we were like, Chicago is over bankruptcy, right? Like, then it comes back like, oh, they kind of used our salaries for marketing after that. So, was it bankruptcy, or is it just the stuff that they feed you? You know, the rumors that you always hear are sometimes too accurate.
yeah. Spoiler alert,
It's
the marketing didn't work, so
Yeah, no, that station, not even there anymore. Um, Another note that I did want to share too is that this company that I was just let go from, and in the years between 2018 and 2021, this company had acquired two of the biggest stations in St. Louis. So it's understandable that the focal point would change. When where we were working was at one point like one of the top billing stations for the company. Now that they had acquired two of the biggest properties in St. Louis, that was no longer the case. Understandable, budgets move around, things change, but it just didn't feel like it ended where we began. And that's understandable because, like I said, there was a lot of changes in those years, not just in the landscape in that company and in that cluster, but in the world with the pandemic and the rest of everything that popped up there. So um, that was another hurdle. Just some things I thought about previously. Oh, it's also possible that our boss said something to the effect of, "You sure you want to do that when it comes to the tattoo?" That was about as far as I remember it going. Like I remember saying in the I watched the episode and I went, "Did he? Did he? Did he?" And I don't recall that because if I were in that position, think about yourself first off as a human, right? And second off as a employee of a company. Would you let that happen, that permanent thing happen, if you knew that there were things happening in that life? Are you that I should stop. I'm sorry. That's possible. When it comes to the tattoo, I feel still things could have moved faster, perhaps a week faster. No tattoo.
yeah.
It could have happened. Um, those are my notes for right now. I wanted to start off at the front with some clarifications. So I appreciate you giving me that time. Remy didn't know what I was just about to say. We usually share a lot of our topics that we're going to talk about. I have this note separate because I wanted to get your real reaction here. And that's the hard part for us. A lot of people don't know that. I like doing that because the live thing is super fun, but it's also hard to not give clarity to your coworkers on what you're going to do. Some of the fun of the live thing, some of the double-edged sword of the live thing as well is like, I want this to be a natural reaction, but
Mhm.
sometimes that natural reaction isn't what you hope it would be.
Well,
So we would try that.
that was always the thing in the studio where like we'd get going off the air on some sort of topic and it was super funny in the moment and we'd just keep going. But no, no, stop. Like, let's take this to the air. Let's save it for, going on the air. So that was always a big thing, was getting that spontaneity and getting those natural reactions where we could. Some of my radio idols, Hamish and Andy in Australia, would
Mhm.
their producer did this whole like TED Talk thing, and he was like, there'll be times when Andy will come to us with an idea, and Hamish is out in the dark. He has no idea what's going to happen, and just so we can capture that natural reaction from Hamish and vice versa as well. They did that so well. So, but they also had many producers and many hands to help with the show.
Support, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's a stranger to us. But the example would have been in the last video. And apologies for the blurring. Contractually, not allowed to use the logo that's tattooed on my arm. But um, that moment, you and Casey, neither of you knew what had happened. So that was a genuine moment where it was like you were seeing it for the first time, and you're like, "That's not real," and it was real.
Yeah.
Is real. But you can go back and take a look at that. So here we are now in a post Mason era for what will be Remy and Kasey on the station now as you move forward. And I wonder, because as that happened, I called you on the ride home. I'll never forget speeding around the bend on 270, headed up around toward North, the North County, right around, you go past Maryland Heights, right? You get that spin around there, or that curve around there where I've been busted speeding before. Um, that's where I was talking to you and going, it's going to be all right. I know this is like not comfortable, but you're going to be great. I'm trying to tell you we're going to be okay. Meanwhile, I'm like obviously losing my mind because I've lost my job again. Um, but I did get a little bit of severance again. Thank you to the union. And I wasn't like tossed out totally on my butt. So things weren't terrible. I had no idea what I was going to do. But thankfully I'd not renewed my, lease. But we've talked about this before. When we lost a job, we just, you unfollow and you kind of block and you put the blinders on because you don't want to see the things that remind you of what's in the past. So my apologies to you, my friend, as I, kind of closed the door on you and I talking regularly. I thought you could probably use that break. And here we are. So, no regrets. I'm sure the same happened in some aspects in other places, but like people, companies, radio stations, I tried to close my mind off to that stuff. So what was happening on your side after I'm let go? Like I leave, I don't know what happens in the day, weeks, or months. Sorry. This podcast will be learning for me years. I don't know what happened for a couple of years in your life.
Yeah.
What'd you do?
So continue doing the radio thing. It was weird because it was, for me, I wasn't sure if I would ever have access to, our YouTube channel again, to our Twitter account again, to the Instagram, to all the socials, to all the things that we had built. We'd built, 10 years of content and all of these great videos and things and memories and all this stuff. And I at that time, and in those initial months where we didn't really talk, I kind of felt like, well, that's I might have hard copies of these somewhere. But I do you remember the popcorn video?
Where
The
you made the buttered popcorn in the
yeah.
movie theater. Yes,
So what
yes.
I did, and I don't know if I ever told you this, but I had an affiliate, Amazon affiliate account for my reef stuff that I was doing. So I affiliate linked all of the ingredients for the popcorn,
Yeah.
and I was making probably, I don't know, $8 a month or something off of that. I was
Yeah,
like,
but hey, that's
can
more than
we,
I made on our YouTube. Hell yeah, buddy.
can we just make the popcorn video live so that can continue? But
That's
what's
hilarious.
funny
Good
is
for you.
like I've gone back now and those ingredients, for whatever reason, how Amazon works these days. It's like, well, we've got, one supplier who has X amount of quantity of this, and then they're done, and then it's over. So all of those have vanished, but
Gotcha.
that was kind of funny. But I think at the
I
beginning,
owned all that real estate. All of that stuff was attached to my emails.
yeah.
And, I want to say smartly it was attached, but also I'm sorry because years later I feel like we would talk and you were eventually like, yeah, hey, can I get this video? I was like, brother, I'm sorry. I'll give you access right now. I'm very sorry. It was years ago and I gave you access to the YouTube. We just needed some time and I'm sorry about that
No,
if you
it's all
felt
good.
like you lost it. Because
It's
I would hoped that if you had needed something, you would have like said, hey, I want this. Like, I know that your Blue Angels video is so near and dear to your heart. I would never take that away from you, my friend. I hope you know
I'm
that.
just gonna need $75 for the popcorn video. Thanks. Okay.
I mean, if you made money, you made more than me at this point.
I'm kidding. Yeah, but so I remember having walks with Casey here in City Park. Her family is close, and now she actually lives in the same suburb that I'm in. So,
Nice.
but I remember us going on these walks and like me writing down feverishly in a notebook and just kind of like trying to come up with new bits, salvaging what we could of the old stuff. I obviously was attached to a lot of that. It's funny because if you tune in, you might hear some of your beds that or our music beds that we used for years and years and years. It's so funny. Like you randomly listening on one day and someone hops on a bed, just a random bed because they're late to the break or something, and it's
Mhm.
like Spider Beat or
One of those beds. And nobody, I don't know if anybody knows that, but those were our music beds. And that was intentional. First off, shout out to Pharrell and Timbaland, who produced some of those beats that nobody knows that these are remixes of Limp Bizkit songs by the Neptunes. I'm sorry, I'm playing dope fuck beats on these country stations and nobody knows it. So another Easter egg for Mason and Remy. But you were still using them. And I know that there were people who were like, you should change the music beds throughout our time. And I was like, you don't understand. This is our branding.
Yeah.
Nobody got the vision, buddy. So no, that's cool. Cause I honestly, I don't think I've used them since. I might've used them in some of these years in between. Yeah, I did. I'll get to that. Because I did try radio again after I left, but still interesting to hear what you did. Cause yes, I have no idea. Very cool to hear that like you and Kasey really like got together. I know that you guys got along. You guys were friends. You lived near each other. Very cool to hear you're like walking around trying to find that, that creative thing to get the juices going. Cause there are some people who work well on a team to like, we gel and our thoughts come together. And I feel like we had that, like we laughed about stuff when we made good content and we were having fun. That's there, but it's hard to force that sometimes too. And I could understand how it would feel tough for someone who isn't you or me and has the relationship that we have to get thrown into that. And then suddenly, I don't know if you expect the same. Obviously, I would think you wouldn't, but happy to hear that you guys were trying and doing stuff still.
Yeah, she was almost exactly 10 years younger. Is 10 years young, almost exactly 10 years younger. So we had a whole generation. We were a whole generation apart. I was an elder millennial. She was a baby millennial / Gen Zer. And so now all of a sudden, the young guy on the show was now the old man and out of touch. So it was a whole new realm for me of hearing that. And I'll never forget, like it never bothered me before, but for whatever reason, hearing that you're old all of a sudden feels it bothers you a little bit for some reason. And I don't know if that's just like, on the air or you feel so like you were in touch at one point. And I feel that to this day where like I felt so ahead of the curve and so ahead of everything, like video, how people are chatting online, how, slang, all that kind of stuff. And I think once you have children, it's just like you get put through this resistor of focus is not on any of that anymore. Any of the pop culture, you're not continuing to learn as much as you were about your craft. All of that kind of gets put on hold while you make sure these things stay alive.
Rightfully so. Rightfully
so. Yeah. So I think that's what happens to a lot of us, especially, as you're going through your career, but it just felt so heightened, with her. So I don't want to say it was hard, but it was hard. It was harder because it was in the last 3 or 4 years that had taken place. It feels like an eternity. Like we were at orientation last night for our kids, and one of the dads comes up and he goes, "Dude, seeing those first videos that you and Mason did, you looked like a child." And I was like, I know I was.
We were children.
We were both very young, and it feels so foreign now. And Chicago even feels a little bit foreign, but I'm still in St. Louis. So I still am kind of around and surrounded by that stuff. And I see, what the station is doing now, which is nothing. And those things are still in my face, but so I think it felt a little bit too close. And I don't want to get into specifics in this episode with like, naming people or any of that kind of thing. I would love to, but it's just like, if you're listening to this and we work together and you feel any sort of like, I hope he doesn't say something about me, I hope that I'm not talked about, you're probably one of the people that I would like to talk about. All of the same stuff that was happening when you were there still happened for the next 2.5 years after you left. It's the same exact stuff. It was the same kind of drama and vitriol and all of that. And it grates on you, just like wears you down and burns you out. And I think if I had to give Kasey and I any kind of success stories, it would be on, our shorts and our reels and our TikToks. And we really buckled down on that kind of stuff. And Kasey is amazing at that. It's like if she puts her mind to something, like when it comes to reels and stuff, like she really hit some gold on the Yellowstone stuff. um did you know that these songs by Hardy, or these songs are actually written by Hardy and sung by other artists, those kinds of like, I didn't know that.
Content.
I didn't know that Hardy wrote that. Things like that, and she was really good at that. We came up
That's
with
great.
the 31 Mornings of Halloween, which I'm actually really going to miss because it was just so much fun, because her and I really shared a love for Halloween and fall and October. And so, we had a whole content calendar for October planned out, where like Fridays were movie nights. So we would suggest a movie, and we had a whole shoot surrounding that. And Hocus Pocus was always the last one of the month that you would watch. And we do like haunted tours and tell stories and talk about the Missouri Monsters and all those things. And she would always do Casey's Witchin' Kitchen, which is not unlike Mason and Alicia's kitchen in a way.
Which was
But
not unlike 700 other videos that were out
yeah,
there.
yeah.
So I don't want anybody to think I had an original idea, because that wasn't a thing. But I did some of that because that was what we did, right? Like, so if I can real quick,
Mhm.
Casey's so great at that because she consumed that content and knew, and she spoke that language. It was the same way that we were talking about Ben and Joey on those videos. They consumed that content. They spoke our language. And it's what we did too when we started in Twitter and on YouTube, is consuming that content and speaking that language of the new generation. And that's, I think, where a lot of radio is missing out, is they are still in that terrestrial bubble of going, but this is what we do, but it's not all you should be doing
Yeah.
at this
Yeah.
point.
Oh yeah. Do more than what you're already doing, because that pile continued to grow as we
Mm,
progressed through our careers as well. And I
yeah.
any radio person, aside from the radio shows that have somebody doing all the socials for them, um, can feel that, because it's not just post up some text and a picture. It's not just that. There's a lot of thought that's put into it. In my job now, it's like, I'm told to like, hey, make a quick reel about this. There is no quick reel anymore. There's no quick reel. You can't just.
Right.
There has to be thought put into these things now. There has to be a purpose. There has to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. This isn't just throwing up a random reel. And sure, maybe one every 50 will hit of your
Hmm.
random reels, and that's your
Hmm.
success story. But I think we hit once on we hit once on a TikTok that we posted about Morgan Wallen. If you pitched up his voice, he sounds like Miley Cyrus. And this was taken. I had seen this on TikTok, and I was like, oh, we can have a fun bit with that on the air. And so we did it, and we had such a great reaction, and we were recording the entire time. And so I made a reel out of it. And then we we did like Reba, and she sounds like pitched down. She sounds like Randy Houser. And it was very funny. Like it just worked.
That's great.
And I think it had, at last count, maybe 3 or 4 million plays on TikTok. And you know,
Yeah.
went out beyond the realm of like, this ain't country. I can't believe they call this country. This ain't country, not my country. Those kinds of comments.
Oh yeah,
Um,
keep it coming. Keep it coming. Hey,
yeah,
every comment helps the algorithm. You people have no idea what you're doing.
yep,
Anybody that leaves a comment on something hating, just know that you're still helping.
appreciate that. Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I
yeah.
love that.
So we
But
we
that's
we tried, and I love Casey to death. She's a good friend. And I think she would agree with me on this, that I think creatively it just wasn't a match. Like it just wasn't, like with you and I, creativity, we were a match, and you could tell that. I mean, we had a 10 plus year career out of that match. And this is why they do chemistry tests with
yeah.
actors and actresses and things like that. Um, we got by, I would say. We got by. I was also, kind of in burnout phase in this era, because we weren't getting the support that we needed. Um,
But you had the name recognition still in the market of 10 years of country radio. And at
yeah,
this point, besides like some guys who were on the air kind of in St. Louis, but also on like hundreds of different stations. So they're busy all day doing hundreds of different station stuff and never get seen. Like, besides that, you're like one of the longer standing personalities in country radio in St. Louis at that point. So yeah, of course, you want to keep that name recognition around. And Kasey is young and is the next generation. I got to tell you, the idea of you being like you had said, what did you call it, elder millennial,
Mhm,
and her being like a elder Gen Z. That's a
mhm.
perfect match, in my opinion, for a morning show. I remember when you and I talked about our differences and who I was versus who you were back to back. We covered everybody.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? Like, we could, if we did this on a full circle, like, we would cover it, and that was the design. So conceptually, on paper, uh, it sounds like it might work.
yeah,
But yeah, I don't, and it's got to be hard too for Kasey, who is put in this situation. I'm sure you know she had enough struggles for anybody.
yeah.
Much more than anybody needed, and again, partially my fault, but also she got thrown in the middle of this. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? And
And
so
she'd
yeah,
been kicked around a little bit too, she done
some
her
other
time.
stations,
Yeah, she'd done her
right?
time at other stations and, was promised things that, took forever to come to fruition and all of that kind of stuff, and I don't wanna speak for her, but,
Yeah,
I honestly feel like if, she was here right now on this podcast, and I wish she could, I didn't ask because I know that it's just too close to everything that just happened, so,
she's still
um
there. She's one of the like two people that are still there. So
yeah,
yeah,
but
don't want to put her in jeopardy.
exactly, but I would say that she would agree with me on I just feel like the creative spark between us was not there to where like we had talked about with the video guys. It just was there. It's just there. It's something you feel it, you can vibe on it and it's there. But with us it wasn't always easy. And that's okay. Like that's totally okay. Could we have done better with some coaching? Probably. Could we have done better? And I threw this out there many times, like, hey, we should probably get some coaching help, some outside help. I manager person, you're too busy. Obviously, cancel meetings every time we go in there, but um, we need some actual like talent coaching for both of us. Like you said, you never got the management training. I also didn't get the management training.
And now
So
you were somewhat of a leader in this position, right? They were
exactly,
trying, I'm sure. Yeah, yeah.
exactly. So I tried my best, and on the end of this whole thing, and we tried to reach out in the community. We adopted a part of 270. I don't know if you saw
I
that.
saw that. I did see that, and that's awesome. I heard it's still there, by the way.
It is.
Shout out.
It is.
Because government bureaucracy moves so slow, almost more slow than corporate
Yeah.
America.
I
So,
don't know
but
if
that's
they're
fantastic.
I got a notice from the Missouri Department of Transportation that they're canceling the Adopt a Highway program. It is no
Mm,
longer gonna be a thing, and the only thing that came to my mind was, I wonder if I've got the right screwdriver to go get that sign so that I
hell
can
yeah.
have it in my house, and then I was like, "No, maybe I'll just email somebody who, can actually do that legally." Because I
Less exciting, but
was less
okay. Yeah, I
excited, yeah.
guess. Yeah,
But
yeah,
that was
yeah. It
fun. I
is.
mean, we'd go out there and we found some pretty wild stuff on the side of 270, which made for some great content to share,
That's
not
fun.
only on the air, but also, that also fulfilled the video part of it too.
Yeah.
Because now we're in a world where, and we knew this early in our careers with each other was, you've got to have the on-air content, but then you've also got to fulfill the visual side of this thing. Radio isn't
Hmm.
visual. It is so visual now. So visual. If you're not coming up with content on the outside of the studio that is video based, you're losing. You're going to lose. It's just I don't think that any radio shows are doing that anymore. But so we did that. The community outreach thing was on our minds. We got brought the idea of doing a campaign for a non-for-profit that would provide a dog to a veteran who is suffering from PTSD. I was like, this is a home run. We both love dogs. And we're the country music is, one of the foundations, I think, is love of the country and patriotism and celebrating those who put their life on the line to, keep our freedoms free and all of the things, right? Um, and I just remember the first time we did this, it was like, let's do a radiothon. Okay, we're gonna do a radiothon. We're gonna raise it's $25,000 to get one of these dogs for a veteran. And I just remember there being like zero support from anybody aside from Casey and I. Like, I remember her and I were emailing our sponsors, and her and I were doing all the things that, like, I feel like promotions directors and salespeople and management should have been doing, but we were doing that on our own. Day comes, week comes, it's just us doing the
Mm.
thing. We don't even have support from other on-air staff at this point. It's just like us out there flailing, trying to figure out how to make this thing happen. And the second year we did it, same thing, just us. I think we were provided pizza for the day, and I appreciate that.
Wow.
But the next couple weeks after that, I remember one of the other stations, and his radiothon, and I don't want to compare that to what we were doing. A whole conference room of people answering phones, providing content for what you're
Mhm.
going to be doing all day, all of that stuff. I remember talking to one of the other shows, and she was like, "Wait, you guys are playing your requests? Like, you guys are manually inserting requests into the log?" And I was like, there's someone that does that, because we're doing that on our own, like just Casey and I.
Oh, like he has people that will take care of that for him, right?
Yeah,
Sounds
and
like. Yes.
and there
Okay.
was another show that also had a radiothon. 25 people in support. Even one of our promotions people was helping them, and I'm
They
like,
had help. Yeah.
"What's happening here? What is happening?"
Ah,
So we
man,
we
that sucks.
bootstrapped it. We did it ourselves. We got it done thanks to still a good friend, Dustin Rao from Songs for Soldiers. Always coming through with that $5,000 donation. Dude's
Oh, that's
awesome.
awesome. That's great.
So he's always been there for us, and I appreciate that. So it
I know
just
that that was a relationship that you had that is in that event is in your community. You had worked with that organization a lot, so not only kudos to him for what he's doing, but kudos to you for what you did for all of that. And it's a testament to show like how successful those things are while you have passionate people involved in these projects and support for them. Can I ask? It's a couple of questions. The 270 adoption, did the station pay for that, or did you have to?
it is not it wasn't a paid for thing. So
Oh, really?
we just had to get approval, and everybody signed off on it. So
So
um,
then it is your responsibility to go clean it up. Was
yeah.
was the okay, okay.
So you have to
Got you.
at least log 4 outings a year. And we were doing that, and we were logging that. And sometimes we'd take listeners, sometimes it would just be Casey and I, and we'd go pick up some stuff and see what we could find, and run away from
Um,
snakes and things like that.
That's awesome. No, that's awesome. That's getting out doing the stuff like you said, creating the content. I'm surprised that it didn't cost. I was surprised that you didn't have to pay for it. I remember when we were supported in the beginning of that run, we hadn't talked about the squishy taco campaign that we had come up with and all the
Yeah.
taco nights. Maybe something for the next episode, but also for the next episode, some you know um, radio consultant tips for everybody on
Hmm.
how to make this thing maybe better because we have some experience in. I'm in a corporate world now. We have some learnings from our previous products and some things that we would apply to the future. But this is all like super interesting stuff because I had no idea this stuff happened, and I'm super happy to hear that you pressed on. I know that that is hard. Like we talked about, like they have these compatibility tests now, and things look like they look good on paper. And I'm going to speculate now because, and I know you guys are friends, and I don't think that this is it, but maybe I would not doubt in advance of me being let go that that was a sentiment that maybe some people knew about, that maybe people knew that that was happening. And if I knew, I wouldn't get involved with me. Like I wouldn't, you know what
Mm,
I'm saying? I wouldn't be like, I'm so creative with this guy who's about to get let go.
yeah.
I'm not speculating that that was the situation for you as well. But if I were in that position, I could understand not wanting to gel well with the person that may or may not be here next month. You know
Sure.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, because that was a hard era from what I understand. But it sounds like you guys did a lot of cool stuff. I know how much you love Halloween. I know how much you love October and this season that's coming up right now. I can tell you that I have had conversations in the last week about giant skeleton purchases.
Nice.
But I don't. There's dogs. There's chickens. There's skeletons. There's a lot to choose from now. The game has changed.
When you walk
We're
into Home Depot or Lowe's, all you hear is from all the fans powering the inflatable things.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, exactly. Actually, I have a trip planned with my wife to do that coming up
Yeah.
this weekend.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure we're doing that.
If
Um,
I had to kind of wrap up and maybe I'm jumping the gun here a little bit, and we can talk more about like what you're doing during this time too,
Oh yeah.
obviously. But I think if I had to wrap up before the lead up to me getting let go, um, what happened here, I think a lot of it had to do with not feeling like I had a vote of confidence ever, when it came to the show. And you had already started to recognize that you felt like resources were being put in other places, that there wasn't a whole lot of attention being paid to this huge property, these heritage call letters. Like, you had already started to notice that. So I just want to amplify that even more for when it was just me and Casey, to really put that into perspective. I was on, I kid you not, and this is totally factual information. I was on a month to month contract for 2 years, almost 2 years. And I just remember going in and asking, like, "Hey, we were pulling in ratings. Like, we had decent ratings. We were on the rise. We were doing well. 25-54. I think we were like, regularly in top 5. I was like, oh, that should be a decent, number to shoot for, to maybe get that vote of confidence. Because when I say a month to month contract, that just means like everything stays the same. So I'm getting all the same benefits, all the same things are happening. But if they want to pull the trigger one month, they can do that. And it's not a breach of contract. Um, and all I wanted was the vote of confidence. That's all I wanted, was for someone to be like, yes, we want to lock you down for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever. And then I felt like I would have felt a little bit more comfortable. Anybody who is in a creative space should know that if you have anything else going on in your life personally, it's so difficult to let your mind be free enough to make things that you're passionate about. If you've got this thing in the back of your mind, like, I don't know, if you and I were in an argument, or if there was something happening at home, or whatever the case may be, it was just so hard to focus and to be free enough to be like, yeah, I want to be silly, and I want to put on a mermaid tail and jump in a and jump in a pool and have
Making
Alabama
a
make
note.
fun of me the
Yeah.
whole time. You know what I mean? Like,
Forgot that we didn't talk about that. Sorry, making a note so we don't forget the mermaid tail.
but I just never got that. It was always oh no, I don't see any indication that
Mhm.
just the runaround for 2 years. And I would invite anybody listening to just put yourself into a situation where you're in a month to month contract for an extended period of time, and what that would do to your psyche. I
Yeah.
And you can ask Casey this. She, every single day would be like, who's getting fired? Who's getting let go? Who's getting
That was
let
my
go?
mind too.
Yeah.
Every single day in radio, I never felt there's no such thing as job security. And I'm sorry to butt in and cut you off, but like, even these contracts were not contracts. They're employment agreements. And really, the company has the wiggle room to let us go with or without cause at any time if they want to. So the idea of a contract, the idea of a non-compete, the idea of you going month to month and not knowing in 30 days whether or not you will still have that job, just disrespectful. Is I'm sorry, it's me from an outside, like, of course, now at this point, going just disrespectful, because I don't see the way radio operates happening in any other place. And it's wild. It's wild to watch. I understand performance based industries are a tough um, business, but I think it's important. You touched on some of the ratings stuff. This is probably a good place for us to talk about the rating system. How is radio rated? Because you get this little thing that picks up the radio signal, and if you're one person in one city, how does that turn into this percentage of the populace is listening to your radio station?
Mhm.
Well, I'll tell you how. It's inflated and improperly weighted. It's a huge imperfect system that they are using to determine millions of dollars of revenue and the future of people's lives.
Yeah. That
It
yeah.
is an oddly manipulated ratings system.
So in a nutshell, this is how I kind of explain it to people who are on the outside of radio. The population of the St. Louis metropolitan area, I believe, is in like the 2.1, 2.5 million range. The city of St. Louis is like 300,000, but that's not
Mhm.
what they rate for. They rate for the
No,
entire
it's the
metropolitan area,
radius.
Charles out to Highland, out to Arnold, all the huge circle around the city, right?
Nashville, Indiana. It goes way out, or Indiana, sorry, Illinois, Nashville, and it goes way
Yeah.
into the southern part of Illinois and way into the eastern part of Missouri as well.
So out of the 2 point however million people, they send out 2,000 of these, what they're called ppm meters, and they have wearables and things like that now. But when you're listening to the station, it picks up the frequency. That's the only way that a radio station is rated. So if you think that by turning off the radio station and you don't have a device, like you're not hooked up with Nielsen, they're not paying you the $2 a week or whatever they send in the mail.
Yeah,
Which, by the way, we received like 4 or 5 of those letters, and I
we
pocketed
did too.
all that money. So thank you.
Did you really? So yeah, that's that letter that you get. If you've got that says, "Hey, here's $1 if you'll help us out." This is how you get into that. We have never been able or allowed to talk about that. Having been employees in the radio world, if we shared with you, "Hey, you should do this," that's kind of like, I guess, a conflict of interest,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You're not allowed to campaign for yourself, but it's a popularity contest, and your entire existence is dependent on this flawed system. I'm sorry. Carry on.
So take the 2,000 meters in the 2 point whatever million population range, and then cut that up into pies. Cut that up into slices of a pie. Some of those people listen to country. Some of those people listen to top 40. Some of those people listen to classic rock or classic hits or all the different radio
Mhm.
stations. So you have these 2,000 meters that essentially determine what people are listening to. Of those, I think in the neighborhood of maybe like 25 to 30 are country based. So your entire career, the money that is made from a country radio station or any genre really, is determined by less than 50 people. And if you are African American, male, you are weighted differently than
Mhm.
a Caucasian male, than a Latino, then they all have a different weight.
Right.
Logistics, statistics, all the things, right? But that's how we're rated. So for those of you that think that just by having your radio on to that station, you are impacting the ratings, you are not, unless you have a Nielsen ppm meter. That's the only way. So that's why we would target certain areas.
Mhm.
We mentioned this
Hot zips.
hot zips. Yeah, we mentioned this in a previous episode where they give you kind of general information. You can see the zip code that the meters are in. And so we would go to those. We like St. Charles was always a very big one for us. Maryland Heights, O'Fallon, Missouri, O'Fallon, Illinois, like pretty much the donut that surrounds the middle of St. Louis City. And we would target those because we knew that there were meters there. And if you can influence 1 meter, the amount of times that I sat in a meeting that they said, "Oh, there's a family in St. Charles, a whole family, four members of a
Mhm,
family that are
mhm.
listening to 93.7 all the time, and that's why they're winning this battle." One family can change the course of a radio station. It's
And
so
it's
bonkers,
employees' careers. It is.
and it's
And if one
employees,
of those
exactly.
people happens to be Latino, then they are weighted differently because you got to look at the population and you got to look at who that represents. And man, if you could find just the right person, like man, say an African American male walked by a radio station that was a radio that was playing country music. Whoo, boy, jackpot. You know what I mean? We might even get a ratings bonus because of how messed up that rating system is.
Yeah,
And if you don't pay Nielsen as a company, you do not get to use those ratings. It is such a and everything depends on that in a world where just decreasing how I don't know how they would illustrate the decreasing listenership in terrestrial radio when they're fudging numbers to make it look like this one family represents a whole community of people. Definitely imperfect, happy I don't. And there are different ways too to do the ratings, because in these bigger markets, these bigger cities, that's where this rating system happens. We would sit down weekly and be able to see where people fell off of the show. Like, when that song ended and you started doing the news, this is where people changed the station. Like, you can see that. That hits you in your soul. You know what I mean? When you can actually see that. And then they're going, how can we change that? And we're micromanaging everything because one person,
Mhm.
who knows? Maybe they had to go to the bathroom and walked away. Like, no, it's me. I did that, right? Like, I'm obviously the rating system is heavily flawed. And I think that is important to talk about,
There's no other
because it's
options either. Like, the
right.
Nielsen is it. Nielsen, and there's another company called Eastland, and I believe that they
There are
do all.
some other options, but they're less reputable and less known. I feel like I've had AccuRatings is one that I worked in a city where they weren't doing it. But again, it's like having a donut shop and then Dunkin' Donuts is across the street. Like, you're done. You know what I mean? You've got the big guy, the big box store is Arbitron, I believe, right? Is what it's called.
Yeah, well, then Nielsen bought it.
That's right. Yep, yep, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Yeah.
Nielsen bought Arbitron. You're 100% right. But that is
Or they merged
the
or something. I'm not sure what the actual story with that was, but yeah. Whenever I say Arbitron ratings, it makes me feel old.
yeah, man. That's me. I remember earlier when I referenced a newspaper. For those who don't know what that is, they would put words on paper and sell it in places because the internet wasn't a thing. And then they would come back the next day and go, "Oops, we messed up." That's what I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
So this is just as we get through our conversation at this point. Um, Remy is going through the motions with a new partner on the show and experiencing for the first time what it's like to be, I guess, in this without me. And that's a rough road. Like, I can understand.
Yeah. I vividly remember the day when I texted you, and I think it might have just been 3 words, and it was or 4 words. I get it now. Like, I understand what it was like to be the person that needs to keep the flow of the conversation going. You need to know the in, you need to know the out, you need to know what's going to be happening. Somewhat, you need to be on time. If you go over, invisible threshold of whatever, program director wants you to be at, whether that be a minute or 3 minutes or whatever. Now,
Mhm.
you've got to worry about that. Are you going long? Are you too short? Are you saying all the things that you need to say? So now I'm in understanding of what Mason went through for 10 plus years, being kind of the ringmaster of the team. So I texted
That
you, basically said, I apologize for, not
and
understanding.
no worries. Like, I don't remember exactly what I said, but I know it meant a lot to me because that is, you shoulder that. The show is on your shoulders. Like, not that it wasn't Mason and Remy, but I was behind the board. I was making the decisions on when I hit a thing or when we played a thing or how it was framed. Um, and then you have your other players as well. Like you said, there's the ringleader of the circus, but then that guy usually goes, and now the man on the trapeze, and then the man on the trapeze does his thing, but the ringleader still needs to know what the end of that act is. And then to keep it fun but structured is super difficult. So that is a sentiment that I very much appreciated, not only from you, but in hearing it from Alabama. Um, I wanted to cry. Like, it meant so much. Like, I thought you hated me. You know what I mean? Like, because I ate that. I had to eat that. I had no other way to go. Like, you don't understand. You know what I mean? Because you didn't until you're there. Then your shoulders get heavy with that weight, and because you care, because you want it to do well, and you know that it means everything now. A lot of the time while you were there, you had your responsibilities. Like, we talked about how we would come up with ideas, and then it was in your hands to do all the video work. And at that point, I was hands off. But I had that other stuff that I was still doing there as well. And now all that's on you. So I could understand why that is heavy. Everybody wants to be the leader, but heavy is the head that wears the crown. So don't go think the grass is always greener. All those metaphors, they all work. I mean it. Yeah, I remember seeing a few things from afar, but like I mentioned I was trying to shield myself from those things, but I was still trying. And I'll talk a little bit about my efforts trying to still do radio in a second. But there were other players that came by too, right? Like it wasn't just you and Casey the whole time. Is that right?
That's exactly right. Much like in Chicago when it was you and I, and we kind of wanted like another perspective. Uh, there was interest from one of the ESPN producers down the hallway. Meet Brad, and he was always a country fan, and I don't know what exactly was happening with that transition, but I think he wanted more of a long-term solution, being in a producer role for a long time, getting paid the same thing for a long time. He wanted a place where he could grow. And so I think after talks and talks and talks of, his interest in country, he came over to be our producer on the show. And this dude was awesome. He was great. He came with material, he came with outlines, he came with ideas, he knew, like, the
I was
one thing
hungry.
I always remember you had said that someone at one point had taught you, somebody at one point in your career had taught you to kind of write some notes before you go into the break. Like, okay, this is one thing I can mention here. This is one thing. Like, we know we're going to be talking about how people got stuck in the arch elevator. Here are some thoughts, maybe some funny lines or things like that. And I never really understood that until I got into your position, and I was like, oh, it's probably good to have some ammunition here. But he always came with that. Like, he always had, and yeah, and I could tell, but I don't think anybody else, like listeners, couldn't tell that he had prepared some stuff in advance. But
Oh yeah.
it was so appreciated. I thought he was a great member of the team. And it was just like in this whole withering away of, going back to like the resources thing. I think if I had to guess, at some point there was a money issue and they had to get rid of somebody, and Meat was the person that was let go of in that situation. But it was positioned like he was not doing the right things, or not a good fit or whatever. And I just kept going like, wait, he's not a good fit. Like, am I not we're not seeing the same person here, because
Yeah.
this dude is
Probably an
like,
audience of one again, right?
yeah, this this
Yeah.
this is all, like, all the things, all the shit, like, he's funny. We can go out on video shoots, and he's like, I remember one we vividly did where I lost a bet and had to learn how to dance on a stripper pole, but we
Hey,
all did it, and I think he stole the show. He was great on camera. He was always willing to participate in things,
attaboy.
and I
Very
miss him.
nice.
I miss him. And I texted him once afterwards, and I never heard back. And I was like, gosh dang it. I hope I'm not the one that he looks at to blame in this situation, or to
Mm.
feel bad. I can't tell anybody, how to be or how to feel, but I think maybe I should text him at some point and just see what's going on and see how he's doing now that I'm out too. And um but yeah, he got let go, and I remember it was the same thing. It was like, here we go again with, oh, where's Meat? What happened to Brad? What happened? And now we're having to just dismiss it on the air and not talk about it on the air. And we can't say anything about it. So we're just DMing people like, I don't know, I just got money issues or something. I don't know. It was, I was just so sick and tired of that kind of stuff happening. And
That sucks, man. I'm
it's
sorry.
unfortunate because he was good. He was super awesome. And I think he's super talented. And I hope that whatever he's doing now, he's just killing it, and his coworkers love him. And, he got married just after he got let go. And, so he's got an awesome wife. And yeah,
Good.
so unfortunate loss there, and short lived. But for the time that we did have him, it was a lot of fun. So
I got to tell you, I've known 3 different people named Meat in radio. All of them are top tier.
yeah.
Dare I say, grade A. Um, that's the end of the pun portion of the program. No, and I didn't get a chance to see a lot of that stuff, but I think I remember seeing like he's working there now. Like, okay. I hope it works out, and I hope that he isn't burned. But radio burns so many talented people And something I think we'll talk about too in the next episode is how radio, it almost strangles you so much to the point that once you let it go and find something else, wait, you can breathe normally?
Yeah.
Like there isn't fear every day for your job. We'll get to that. There's a whole bunch of things that I think that we can talk about. Um, but very interesting to hear from your side because I was literally blind to it for, probably 2 years. Took me some time to come to terms with what I had lost, what I thought I had done, the person I thought I was, trying to be a better person, um, and not knowing what to do when you've lost the job that you have done since high school. And you think that at this point, I'm 11 years into a team show. Can I do a solo thing again? Do I even want to dive into that? Because what that means is I'm going to have to move to another city if I want to be paid a reasonable wage.
Yeah.
And that's just the size of the city that you work in is relative to the amount of money that you're going to make in marketing, which is going to basically prescribe how much of a budget a radio station has. Um, so I live now in Normal, Illinois, which is a relatively small town. Um, the station budget here is not massive, but when this ended, I remember saying, I'm going to try a normal life, see what that's all about. Because I had been living, like you had said previously, away from my now wife of 5 or 6 years at this point. We had never lived in the same home. She had kept a place in Bloomington Normal where Keaton could still go to school so that he wouldn't have his world uprooted when I moved to St. Louis, to Chicago, to St. Louis 3 times in this 2 years, right? So I start thinking I've done this at this point for 24 years, 24 years at that point. What else? I didn't go to college. I ain't done nothing but that since. So I figured radio was my only option. So to dive into a little bit about where my head was at, I obviously needed some time to probably cry, and go, what the hell am I going to do? I remember packing up my place in Glen Carbon because I didn't renew my lease. I had to move by the end of June, I believe it was. We started in July there. I was let go, I believe, the end of April, start of May. So I had 2 months, May and June severance before the contract was up. So in those 2 months, I started going, well, if I'm going to be worth anything to any other radio show or any other radio property or any other radio company, I need to show that I can not only still do this, but I can do it on a different level, the level that you and I had set the bar for, right? Which is a pretty high bar when it's coming to one guy trying to do that stuff. But I had enough equipment from this time where I was like, videos I know are the way to go. So I started creating some like vlog style stuff just to kind of be like, hey, I'm still alive and available if anybody is looking for, whatever.
Yeah.
In that time, I think I remember you, and I only found out about this afterwards, but like people were watching the videos and would actually mention them to you.
Yeah.
And here's me in my vacuum. I have, what's the word? No friends. So I don't talk to anybody, and I'm in this vacuum, right? It's just me, the wife, Keaton. That's all that matters at this point because the radio thing is done. I don't know what it looks like on the other side. So I didn't know if anybody was there or listening. There were some comments, right? Like there's always some buzz and some chatter,
Yeah.
people coming in, but I didn't know that anybody in your world cared still. You know what I mean?
I think that it's probably somewhat of the same population of people that are listening to this podcast because they're
I hope so.
curious if they're going to get mentioned or talked about. But there was some general hubbub around the station of you see what Mason's doing. You see what that is, stuff like that.
It's
But
safe to assume that that's happening right now about us.
oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
2 hours long. Who do these guys think they are? I'm sorry, but this isn't for you. This is
Yep.
for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. 100%. 100%.
But yeah, so you were doing the videos, and I was watching them because I was curious to see what was going to happen. But you had made what, like 5 or 6 of these videos, which was just kind of like here's what I'm doing. Here's my empty house. Here's my
Yeah.
new station. Things like that.
Here's me crying about something I found that Keaton made like 10 years ago. I remember that. Like I found he drew on a folder that had Darth Vader and it had a picture of me with a lightsaber that he drew in crayon. Like I cry. I'm crying, right? Like I am definitely not above crying for them mighty dollar bills. And I've done it before and I'll do it again. So I was like, this is real. But that's kind of what I wanted to do, was more real stuff. And that's what I think was biting me at the time, because this reality that I was living was kind of sad in some places where I'm trying to, but it almost felt like a fall from grace, right? Like I'm a part of this very acclaimed morning show that we had going for years. What am I going to do? And I felt like the pressure was on. How am I going to live up to that? What am I going to do next? But more importantly, who am I? What am I doing? I'm a married guy who hasn't lived with his wife. What am I doing? So that became a priority for me. I wanted to try out normal human life in comparison to what this thing was that I was doing, which was living away from my wife. So yeah, I packed up. I didn't have a job. I packed up the house in Glen Carbon and moved into Alicia's closet. Basically, she had a nice walk-in closet, and I put my desk in there, and that's where I was like, just I don't know, gaming, and just trying to find a job. Meanwhile, a big shout out to everybody in what was Radio Bloomington. I don't know if they still call it that anymore, because I returned back here to where my wife lived in Normal, Illinois, to work on the stations again where you and I met, where we started our adventure at that cluster, that same group. Thankfully, a lot of the same folks were still there, and I was able to come in and do some fill in. Right. So now here, I've got still a place that I can, keep moving, keep doing this thing, keep, I guess, my craft owned in a way, but also it was just fill in, right? Like I was just coming in. Maybe somebody had a day off. I'm not trying to blow anybody's mind. I'm not trying to work harder than the average pay, which by the way was $11 an hour. And I want to be clear when I talk about the marketing budgets being, indicative of what the actual radio station revenue looks like and what the salary then looks like for an employee. This is a very small town in comparison to the cities that you and I had worked in previously. That's not a dig on the company. I want to make sure of that. And also, I was only really giving them about $11 an hour worth of content. They were getting what they paid for. So for about a year, I'm filling in. I remember the holidays going, am I really working like on New Year's Day after, 24 years of big market radio for $11 an hour? Not even time and a half. You know what I mean? And I'm recording it. So it's only like an hour or two. So how am I supposed to make this work? Any full-time position that they could offer me did not hit the mark for me as someone trying to provide for a family. So I wasn't sure that it would work out. So I was just going through this thing and not really sure of what I was doing. But I remember filling in on B104 for a lot of friends. Shout out Dan Westoff, the person who gave me that opportunity to come back. He has now since retired from the business, and I hope is happy and enjoying his life with his wonderful family. But I remember working the 4th of July, and he was there on the holiday, the boss, because he had to be. Because budgets to pay people to do the work is better saved for when they need it over him coming in and sacrificing his 4th of July to run the simulcast for the fireworks. I was there that night. It was him and the news director and me running 3 different stations going, what is this? Like somebody should be able to be trusted with this. But instead, you've got the guys that actually run the show here. The highest paid individuals on the station are charged with the holiday work. It didn't feel right. So Dan retires. I'm still filling in. I remember a program director coming in and saying, hey, I'd love to set up some air checks with you. And I've seen this question from someone. What's an air check? I'm sorry if we have been too deep on the interworking garble of what is radio. An air check is where you sit down and you listen to the show that you did. You check the air, right? You're listening to the show that you put down with your boss or an audience, somebody to say, hey, what'd you think? How could we have done this better? You listen. We did that for 11 years. We would have regular weekly air checks. There were times, I think in Chicago, where it was like 3 times a week we had air checks. You hate the sound of your voice on recording? Come here. 3 times a week. I don't have the same effect as the guy on TikTok because I don't have my thumb to do the thing, but you understand, right? Like, that's hard stuff. So yeah, the anxiety is up there. I talked about it before. It's probably why I got this little mark on my nose because I just stare in the mirror and judge myself. So it's tough. When she said, "Let's get you in for an air check," I said, "No, thanks.
I love that response so much.
I am not interested. I'm not interested in being told to do a better job for $11 an hour." I don't know if I said that. I know, I think I did, because I remember this person saying, "Yeah, you really have been kind of phoning it in." And I kind of went, "It's $11 an hour. It deserves nothing more."
Yeah.
I don't think that person lasted that long at that radio station. From my understanding, they butted heads with a couple of people, and they're not there anymore. It was a very short run for them. No fault of their own. I'm sure they were just trying to do their job. I would have also asked me to be a part of an air check, but where I was in my life, I did not have more time to spend on developing this 25-year talent that I had been successful at, to have this person tell me how to do it better when I knew exactly what I needed to do at this time,
Yeah.
which was $11 an hour worth of work, which is, "Hello, I'm Mason. This is a radio station. Here's what they want me to read. Here's a song." And that's what I did. And they said, "We can pay you for 1 to 2 hours of work when you record 5 hours of a show." So they got 1 to 2 hours worth of work put into 5 hours of a show.
Yeah.
I also did some fill in on WJBC, a legendary talk station here in central Illinois, back when agriculture and this was the way of the world, how you found out about the commodities in the world. This station had built such a following in this farm area. Different world now, but I had a lot of fun doing talk radio. And if I had to say where there was anywhere that I felt the most comfortable, that was it. Look who's talking here for 2 hours on end with I'm very comfortable in that world. And I feel like if I were to ever jump back in, it would be something like that, like this. And I remember filling in for people like a stretch here around Christmas, maybe a couple days there in the summer where people could take some vacations. But it didn't feel good. I didn't have the passion to say, I'm going to put forth a product that represents what Mason is and what MasonShow will be. But I had some work kind of on the side, like part-time stuff. I was still getting my feet wet. I was still creating that content that I was like going, "Hey, here's a YouTube video about where I'm at." I remember filming it underneath that tower and I don't know, writing out some wordsmith diatribe, some, monologue about life, thinking that anybody cared about what I have to say. And that's what I struggle with now is why, what am I doing? What do I know? I don't know shit. Enjoy your life. So what I want to say now, where I spent 10 or 15 years going, "Trust me, I know everything. Here's my opinion." Now I don't know if I want to tell anybody what I'm thinking, because it's so scary to tell people what you're thinking these days. But I remember around this time, and some stuff that we have not talked about yet, is that I was creating content for a video game since 2016. When we were in Chicago, Keaton was 10, was loving 15 maybe. He was loving streaming. He was loving YouTube, and video game content was on the rise. I remember trying to sneak it in here and there. You know what I mean? Trying to go, I'll be streaming today. Or I was in the last episode wearing my Twitch shirt and hoping that the nerds would catch my dog whistle and be like, "Wait, Twitch shirt, does Mason stream?" There were some who are, and there were some really great people who I connected with while I was playing games on streams. But doing that on the side, I had started playing this game called The Walking Dead Road to Survival. This and other games, the bane of my existence for Remy and others who wanted me to focus on things. Meanwhile, I am just in my phone on the morning show going, "We got 3 minutes. Shut up. We're fine." You know what I mean? I'm doing this, and then I'm unprepared for the break or whatever. So this annoyed Remy while we were together, but this turned into a career for me in the second phase of my life. because where I started making content for this video game, like just doing live streams and these live operated mobile games, which is the space I was working in, they have ongoing events. They have things that go around. They have whole communities of people who discuss what's happening. And these were the people I was connecting with. I was doing this, kind of off the radar. I would get home from the radio show. I would go stream a few hours on Twitch. I would make a video under the name Invisinerd, which was my, I guess, handle or persona in that world, my screen name in all these games that I played. So I would share my content. And over the years from 2016 until this point, I was still just making content. It was a hobby. It was something to do on the side. I tried to sneak it in on the air, but knowing that the people that were following us were here for, country music or radio stuff or St. Louis stuff, it may not be video games. So I was trying to be very careful in creating this separate entity. We've talked about that before, where I know that you had your Bahama Llama Coral that you went in on, and you didn't want to associate it, but I was always trying to be like, you sure you don't want to mention that? Because I want to mention this, because I want to lay the seeds for the future.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm doing this behind the scenes. I lose the job. I'm still kind of doing this. A community manager position opens up for this game. And I'm in contact with a couple of the people who are actually that work on the game. And I said, is this a real thing that I could apply for? And so in that, a second career started for me here in the second phase of my life. And I think I started to realize some stuff here. I realized that the pursuit of what you and I wanted to do took my focus so hard that I was not the person I used to be. That I had put my head down in 2010, and in 2021, I looked up and life was different because of what I had done, because of where I had gone, because of what we had made. Some of it was great, some of it was not. I felt like a new person in this moment because my whole life was not dependent upon my radio achievements or existence, because until this point, that's all I had. I had focused so hard on that I had missed weddings. I had lost friends. I had missed out on big moments with my family because I was so far away. And for whatever reason, I thought that if the Mason part of Mason and Remy wasn't there, something was wrong. And I could never take the time to go back and visit my family for a week. Taking a week off in radio is death. They will bring someone in just to fill in, but your thought is, I am so replaced.
Yep.
Shit happened to you, and like right in the end, didn't it? Didn't they have somebody come fill in? You went on a vacation to Florida, and suddenly there's somebody else on the air with your co-host.
Yep.
I don't know if they told you about that or not. Did they even let you know that was? I hope that
it was. I think it was a last minute thing. As I was like, the last couple days, they're like, oh yeah, so and so is available. They're gonna come in and just
we're just gonna do a compatibility test on the live air while you're month to month. Don't worry about it.
Exactly. So here I am in the middle of freaking Slinky Dog Dash's queue in Disney World, listening to the show so that I can make sure that this dude isn't going to take my job. Spoiler alert!
You're listening.
Spoiler
Son
alert!
Of a bitch, I hate.
He doesn't take my job. I'm not sure where he's at right now, and I don't care. But that's the
reality.
That's this business. It's stress, even when you're on vacation. Like
there's no break.
I remember Casey was such a big advocate for this, and I praise her for being able to disconnect on vacation, like just not even check in at all. And I was like, I'll send you guys some audio. While I'm at Disney World with my family, I'll go ahead and give you a little updates, and I'll make sure, because I felt like like you said, if you're gone, you're gone, like
out of sight, out of mind.
For program directors, for executives, for your team, for whoever. And it's like, you feel like, and there's so many stories, including my own, of when you come back from vacation getting let go that next week, which is just absolutely insane. It's like they let you take that last little piece so that they can take those vacation days back, and then and then they let you go. But yeah, I don't know where we were going with that, but
I remember watching that from the outside, and of course it was a last minute thing. Surely it was. Well, I want to go back for a second. because this is the world. You're right. This is the world where you are on vacation with your family, and where you were in line for what? Because these are not words I've ever heard together in a sentence. Say it again.
Slinky Dog Dash. It's Slinky Dog
Yeah.
from Toy Story. He's got his own little roller coaster there. Yeah.
Okay, I've never been to a Disney, so when you said that, I was like, I love, first off, I love that that's a thing. I love that I have no idea what the hell that is, but that there are people who are in line for it.
I will say
That's what I
that's Toy Story Land is right next to a land that I feel like you need to visit.
was at the Galactic.
It
What's it
is
called?
I believe they call it Galaxy's Edge, which
Yes,
is
yes.
the most
Star Wars.
realistic Star Wars experience I've ever been in my life. And I'm not a huge Star Wars fan. I'm not really a Star Wars fan at all. But you would just, I know you don't like people. I know there's a hordes of people at Disney, but like if you could get there, I feel like this is another one of those moments where you would cry. You'd walk in and
I absolutely would.
you would
I
it'd be
absolutely would.
waterworks.
I mean, when they had the first of the movies that came after, I cried at the Star Wars. Like it went "Wah," and tears. Like
Yeah.
that's such a part of my life. It's such a part of my personality. Literally everybody knows me. That everyone that knows me has at one point given me Star Wars something. To the point that I can go right back here
Oh yeah,
and,
nice.
and show you the Star Wars. See if this still works. See if this battery works. Doesn't look like the battery. Oh no, it works. We got to turn out the lights here. Here.
There's little lights in
It's
the ears. Yeah.
It's blinking. It's blinking. But Remy got me these mouse ears. This is the closest to Disney I've ever been. I also have taco number 6273 on
Nice.
display. Is our Mason and Remy squishy tacos that we had made. I don't know if you still have any of those.
I think I have the whole box, honestly.
By the way, I just realized I'm like business on the top. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's like
this is work from home life.
True TV broadcast right there.
Work from home life is what this is right here. Yes, I'm business from the waist up. That's what's happening right now. Comfort from the waist down. And that is now my life because I work from home. In the post radio life, as this was happening, I remember applying. I was filling in at the talk radio station. In between going on the air, I had an interview for the job that I ended up taking as community manager on that game, The Walking Dead Road to Survival, which Remy hated. Talk a little bit about that just for a second, because I know that you would watch me play this game and it would just annoy the hell out of you literally every morning.
Yeah.
Every morning.
Yeah. It became so much of a part of your life that you were right. It even sometimes while we were on the air, you knew the game so well that you could have your phone here and you could be like in a conversation and you just see your hands just doing this the entire time. I don't know who I just texted.
It still happens.
But you could do that. And that was your main argument whenever I brought that up was I can multitask, dude. I know what I'm doing here. And I was like, oh, okay. But
I had faith in being neurodivergent. Like, I can do this, bro. This is for me.
But you had a YouTube channel. And we both kind of had offshoot YouTube channels that we were working on the side. Like you had mentioned earlier, but I love that it kind of transitioned for both of us in the same way into our next careers. So
it really did. Radio kind of sets you up to be, I know I feel like at one point you had a website with your voiceover work on it.
Yeah.
Like we all want to do that, right? Like what an easy gig. Being a voice guy, those guys sit, they read thing, they get check. What a great gig.
Mm-hmm.
Why would you not want to do that? So it sets us up to be quality presenters and hosting things, which some people have a huge anxiety about, is just secondhand, no problem. I think you and I are natural entertainers, and a crowd comes in and we're like, no problem.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I got this, no problem. So you talk about what you know and what you love, whether that's coral reef and saltwater fish or video games and zombies is what it was for me. So yeah, I was making these videos on the side about this game. I am, and then this may be a weird like offshoot for some folks that don't care, but video game content is highly monetized on YouTube. and it's very easy for you to make some money. I made a little bit of money, and that was a big goal for me. As a gamer nerd, I can show you the money that I've made now, even more so that I work for a video game company. But as a creator, as just a guy live streaming and making content, I can show you the checks I got from Google and from Amazon. Google, who owns YouTube, Amazon, who owns Twitch. That happened. That's like a personal goal check, right? Like, that's pretty cool. In your face, mom and dad. I can make money playing video games. It's actually my career now. I took a job as the community manager on The Walking Dead, and Remy will speak to when The Walking Dead came out. I wouldn't shut up about it. I know it was like the show, the comic, and now this video game. I was so in on this new, I don't know, zeitgeist of zombie stuff that was coming, because it was a whole wave. Like, it was everywhere for a little while. And so I interviewed to be the community manager, which is, for folks who don't know gaming at all, it's basically the communications mouthpiece for a video game. And these video games are live operated. So week to week, there are new events. These are ongoing games that are monetized. So you can play for free, and anybody can download this game. You can play it. Now, if you want to get competitive or get to what's called the end game, probably going to take you a little bit of cash to catch up. That's how these things go. But after, I think at this point, it was 5 or 6 years I had been playing this game, it was still going. And so I took the job as community manager, and I stopped working in radio. I saw my 25-year anniversary coming up, and I seized the opportunity to write my own story and say 25 years is good. What's next? On March 3rd, 1997, I walked into WTCF-FM in Carlton, Michigan for the first time as an intern. And on March 3rd, 2022, 25 years later, yeah, that's 25 years. 25 years later, I said, I don't want to do this anymore. So bookends, what's next? I got the job working for one of, if not the biggest mobile game company based here in the States, with some of the biggest games. And I'll talk about them in a second here. You may know some of them, but I don't want to like go too deep, because I do still work there and I don't want to lose my job, because I love it. But this is a part of my story, and where I was at this time is I took a job as the community manager, basically the communications mouthpiece for this game, this property, which is a big IP. The Walking Dead is not a small company. Skybound is the company that made those comics. They're also behind things like Invincible is another big show that's on Amazon, an animated show that's on Amazon right now. And he's got a bunch of other comics that came out. So, and of course, all the TV shows that Robert Kirkman is a part of. It's a big, what's called intellectual property, a big IP. The company I work for has a lot of them. Monopoly, Star Trek, The Walking Dead, Marvel, and it goes on to a ton of different games and that are ongoing. So I think I sent you a sample of what it looked like for me wanting to be a community manager, knowing this world. I speak this language. I watch video game content, and now I'm about to make it. This is a cool opportunity for me. So this was over on the Walking Dead Road to Survival YouTube channel. It's a little bit of what Invisinerd did after he no longer was in radio. Welcome back to another Survivors Update. It's Mason, in-game as Invisinerd, community manager here on the Road to Survival, giving you a shot in this video to win Ultra Mythic tokens. You can use them this week for the Mystery Ultra Recruit that's on the way. Plus, in this video, more opportunities for you to win during our 7th anniversary celebration. Can you pause?
We'll start there.
Look around the room a little bit, right? It's covered in Walking Dead stuff. That's Clementine over my shoulder. It's all the comics behind me. It's a Negan book behind me. He was the guy with the bat. I'm in that world. It almost looks like it looks right now around me, except more, Star Wars stuff because that's more of my passion. But this is basically what I saw us doing when I talked about how we could be on camera and creating content at the same time as a radio show. I'm doing the same thing, just around a game. We don't have to watch any more of this. There's like literally not a lot here that people may, unless you want to go forward with what's here.
Of news other than the 3rd mini event for the 7th anniversary
3 sorrowful lives began with cross.
So you're basically like giving updates on this game.
Yes. Yeah, basically.
Like an
Can I
insider
Yeah,
point of
to the
view.
players, trying to share the news and what's going on. Can you come on in here? Hey, look who's here. It's Keaton.
Hey,
Look at Keaton,
that's
ready to
Keaton.
go. Yeah, this is
5-year-old
20-year-old
Keaton
Keaton.
is now 20-year-old
That's
Keaton.
right, that's right. I just wanted to say, hey, we've been talking about our life on the radio for the last, like, 11 years together, and I feel like we watched some content with your tiny body in there, like, as a 10-year-old with red hair, and now here is a 20-year-old with, well, he's got the do-rag on right now. You don't have to take it off if you want to.
It's not a do-rag. It's just a bandana.
My bad, it's a bandana. He's got all
That's
kinds of
awesome.
pattern in his hair right now. Yeah, I love it. Had it out?
Yeah, I actually talked to my hair person today about dyeing it red too.
Dude, going back to red?
I'm going back to red.
Oh.
I'm seeing 21 Pilots at the United Center. How long ago?
Yeah,
saw them?
when you met them 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
When I took him as a kid to meet 21 Pilots, he's going back now with his girlfriend who just turned 21. Now she's into it. So I just wanted to get Keaton's face onto the podcast.
That's awesome.
It's
Good to see you, man.
He said, good to see you. Have fun. I'll talk to you later.
The 21 Pilots thing was so huge for him at such a young age, and I vividly remember the handshake that you guys did, where you basically did the exact same thing as they did in the music video.
Yeah.
And I remember many 21 Pilots shows that you guys went to, and that was like his band. So
he loved that. It was like one of the first bands he attached to, and we are planning a leftover bits episode of the of the podcast, like, because we've missed out on a lot of stuff. I'm gonna write that in there, so we don't forget. Because I'm especially proud of that, because that's a real life moment for me. I didn't have a lot of those, like, what means more than whatever we're doing on the air. I never cashed in that card to go meet a band until that kid. You know what I mean? Until it meant something to somebody else. So we'll get into that. But I'm sorry to derail. He was headed out of town. He's going to visit his girl at work that goes to school at U of I. So he's headed out. I had no other time to catch him. So we were chatting about, and really, he was the bane of me getting all the streaming equipment. Was like, oh, Keaton wants to do this. What an excuse for me to buy a nice camera and a quality video game, right? Yes.
Click
And
Unite.
he also,
I remember now. That was his YouTube. The Click Unite was his YouTube channel. I remember we campaigned for him in Chicago to get him some subscribers. I remember that.
we did, and he actually just the other night was streaming The Last of Us. He still does it. He still sometimes streams, and I feel like it's got to be like you're this close to being a millionaire when you're a kid now. Like, you know what I mean? You just start streaming and you might be the next one. It could happen to anybody. But he was the reason I got some of this stuff that I'm actually looking at right now. And of course, maybe it was me, you buy toys so that you say it's for your kids, but really you want to play it with it, right?
Yeah.
So, hey, I turned it into a career. Again, in your face, mom and dad, and anybody else who said that. What are you doing? So I become the community manager there, and basically I'm making those videos every week. I'm dealing with the community of players on Discord. I'm doing what we did, right? Like, we made memes and different content videos for the audience. It's the same thing, just a different stage is kind of how I was looking at it, especially from my backpack full of ammo, my skills, my talents. This is how I could use what I had learned through radio to be a mouthpiece and continue to feed my family. My company is based in LA, but has offices in Barcelona and in Ireland and in India and in just all around the country, because games don't stop. 24 hours a day, people all around the world are downloading these games, and hundreds of thousands of people every minute are having issues, and they connect with people. And so they come to the Discord, or they come to, whatever platform the social media is on, and go, hey, I have an issue. And so as a community manager, you're trying to connect these people with solutions or provide information and inform the player base of these kind of things. So at this point, my grind ends. And I remember posting when we moved into this house that I felt like I was retired. I remember a line that I saw somewhere that says, retirement is when you stop living at work and start working at living. I felt like that's what I did in 2021. The stress of the show on my shoulders was gone. I moved in with my wife. I had a family all of a sudden. that was around me all the time. We're still together years later, by the way, for those who said it wasn't possible. I made like 6, 8 years. No, but yeah, okay, 6 years of a long distance relationship, right? Like 5 years of, this is wrong. 5 years of a long distance relationship, 6 years of a long distance marriage, 11 years apart until we finally come together in this moment. And it's in the wake of my biggest failures. So I had to quickly adjust my perspective on a lot of things. My grind here for a radio career ends. And because I mentioned earlier, I remember coming up my head, like I feel like it was over, and I looked up and I looked around like, oh shit, nobody's here, like what's going on? I've owned a house for almost 2 years and no one's come to it. Like it's fine. But that's my fault. I'm living in the wake of my mistakes. I've definitely lost track of a lot of friends. I lost connection with a lot of people who I held very near and dear to my heart because I went off to chase these dreams. And I remember people, hell, even you going like, you got to have a life first. And I was like, nonsense. And I go, I'm busy. I have no time for this. You're missing opportunities. But I wanted to try that life now. And after a couple of years, yeah, I was wrong. Everybody who is like, got to have a job first, I would not recommend it. I chased that pretty hard. Didn't get married till I was 35, definitely think I waited to focus more on me. And now in the later phase of my life, wish I had this feeling as I approach work because it's no longer the feeling of every day I'm going to get let go. My employers trust my skills and trust me to run with it. I'm responsible. There's a procedures. This is what I'm learning in these years now are the soft skills that Remy probably learned while he was working at State Farm or going to college. I didn't have that. I was right out of high school, an intern. My 18th, my graduation day, I was on the air the next morning in my cap and gown. I never had a break from being thrust right into it. So there were times when I had lost my job. I remember in Saginaw when I had lost my job and I was off for a little bit of while, I took some time. When we lost our job in Chicago, I was like, let's take some time. But I understand you didn't have that same feeling. We needed to do some stuff. That's where I was like, while Remy is trying to get his footing with this new show, I'm trying to get my footing with a whole new career and a whole new life and a whole new perspective on everything. I move in with Alicia, feel like I'm retired. Life happens in this time. We lost Alicia's dad. We lost my brother within 2 days. Like my brother on the end of June, her father, they were right next to each other. My parents called one night, the next night, the other call. We have to rush to Florida to take care of dad's estate. Everything is crazy, back home to go be with mom and dad who just lost their eldest child. My brother and I didn't get along. Oh, but I cried. It was tough times, but I'm better, like I feel so much better now than I did. I can't even imagine what that would have been like having to still have to go on the air and feeling like I couldn't take time off to be with my family because I probably would have felt that. I probably would have felt while I'm home with my mom and dad grieving the loss of my brother, they're doing a compatibility test with somebody to take my job. That would have been my feeling.
It's not beyond the realm of possibility.
That would have been my feeling. That's what I was feeling about I was traumatized by the feelings that radio gave me. And when I hear people talk about what after the radio life is like, the stress of radio and the feeling of that being gone, life is so good.
Yeah.
Like it's so much better. I'm sure you have your day-to-day concerns with family and career, but it still isn't that.
Yeah, that's so true. And it felt hard to, one of the things that I took away from those videos that you did right after you got let go from the gig was you had mentioned something about how you wish you would have taken more time to be with family and to cherish the moments with friends and family and things like that, and not taking the job so seriously. And and I was still in when I saw that and when it hit me, and I still felt like I just feel like radio is kind of like a mentally abusive relationship that you're in, and you hear these stories about women and men who are in these relationships who like anybody from the outside's like, why the hell are you still in that? Like, what are you still doing that to yourself for? You idiot. What are you doing? But on
I
the
feel like that.
inside, but on the inside, you don't know how to get out. And your whole existence is kind of it surrounds the fact it's who you are. It's radio is what you are, what you do. So you can't fathom a life without it. Like, what's my next step? What do I do from here? Well, guess what? Radio is like the tiniest little slice of the pie in the grand scheme of things, and it's getting smaller every single day. Like
Yeah.
it will be a newspaper at some point. And I know that nobody on the inside of the radio wants to think about that, but it's legit. It may take 20, 30 years before that happens, but it's going to happen. And it's not the end of the world.
Mhm.
So,
Your skill set will be valuable elsewhere, and every other job is not as stressful as what you're used to. Those were like some really serious notes. You talked about the abusive relationship. It's very interesting how you should be thankful you have a job in this crazy industry goes right up here with you're lucky I'm even with you. You know what I mean? Like it's kind of like that abusive boyfriend that's like,
mhm,
whatever, nobody wants to date you anyway. Kind of like, are you a manager of people?
mhm,
It's wild to think about that, but the business is the business, and I'm sad to say that I'm looking at it from the outside, but happy that I'm past that. And I
yeah,
hope that this helps somebody on that side. This is an important point too. I saw this. It was a meme, but it rings true. And I think we should all contemplate this. And I wish someone had said it the many times that you and I had butted heads on things. The meeting starts, you sit down and you look at each other and you go, hey, I just want to remind everybody here that life is short and we are all dying. With that in mind, this is not that serious. Let's begin. And that's where we should all go from, because really anything we're doing is not that big of a deal. But
mhm,
for me in that time, there was nothing bigger. And I'm sitting here in retrospect saying I was wrong, saying I missed out on a lot. I was not a good person when I was in that mindset. And if that's fueling you, I hope that you can open your perception to be a little, or your perspective to be a little better than what you're hurting yourself with.
yeah,
Because I definitely know I was hurting myself more than anybody else in that time.
yeah. I think that's a good way to put things in perspective. Another thing is knowing how small you are in
Yeah.
this big wide world. And I remember this was like a week ago, and I love that the kids are at this age where they kind of are contemplating things like, what is the universe? And so I was like, well, you're here in this car right now. We are in Monroe County, Illinois. We are in the state of Illinois. We are in the United States. We are in North America. And we kept on going out and out and out. And I was like, beyond our Milky Way galaxy are millions of other galaxies. So we are specks in the middle of specklessness. That's how important everything is. It's not. It's not. Just let go. And I
Yeah.
often find myself even in my job right now, like, are they having meetings right now to find out who's next in my position? Like, you think they're doing that? And it's just like the regular world doesn't work like that. Like, after being in radio for so many years, you think that whole like, well, if you're not going to do it, there's 10 other people that are waiting for your job. So that's what you should be thinking about. And that's just it's a wild ride. But it's nice when you have those tools, like you said, with how we should start meetings and how we should view ourselves in the world, to kind of put things in perspective.
And by the way, nobody, I feel like, under the age of like 38 will be able to hear any of that. It's all white noise, and it's that advice that the younger you would never listen to,
Yep.
right? Because we're young, and that's what we do when we're young. We're young, we're brash, we know better than everybody else. We're confident that we can do whatever. These guys, right? I know what I would have said to me. So don't bullshit me and make me think that you're somehow better than that. Like, listen,
Yeah.
we all were there. We understand there's no better way to learn it than to go through it yourself, because you won't believe it any more than when it happens and it impacts you. We can warn, just like your mom said, don't touch that hot stove. You still touch that shit.
Yeah. The
It's
older generation that's listening right now, our senior citizen listeners, if we have any, are all like, they've made it. They've crossed the line.
welcome. Yeah, welcome. Yep. Yeah. You know what? There's a lot of people in old white guy town, but it's nice to be here.
Yeah.
Years later, I'm about 3 years into my job now with my company. And I've moved to another game now. So I'm not in the spotlight. And that was something that I took a relief with. I know that you think radio, like so many people. I talk to so many more people in a video game, because it's not only, nationwide, it's worldwide. It's thousands, it's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people. That's more than I was reaching on the radio. So, I mean, my audience was now bigger. And yet, some folks would say it wasn't, like some people would probably look at it and go, he gave up, he's not doing radio anymore. But I'm doing, like, in my opinion, bigger. Like, I've got a bigger audience. I've done something new. I moved to another game now, but if I can really quick share a moment that made me feel like I've done something as a nerd, as someone who plays video games. There's that first screen when you turn on most games now, where you start to make your own character. And you try as best you can to make it look like you, or something that you think you look like, or you want to look like, right? So getting yourself into a video game is like the top of the world for a nerd like me. So when they actually did it for me, I am in this Walking Dead Road to Survival video game. They have a faction of people that they were able to create in the world, which, by the way, you have to go to the IP. You have to go to the people that made it and go, is it okay for me to create this character? And I was like, can you call him nerd? Can you call him Invisi? Can you call him geek? No, they called him Byte. That's fine. BYTE, because he's part of a faction of people who worship technology. Do you have the picture? So I gave them the picture of me. Shout out Exotico Tequila. That hat is one that I got while we were doing remotes during the pandemic. But I gave him that face, I gave him that, and they drew this character on the left off of this. So this is my character in the game. And this is right. I've got the computer stuff all over me. I worship technology. Note my weapon is a spiked microphone on a chain. I specifically requested this custom weapon for someone like me. And then I think there's one more where it talks about the effect of the weapon has improved taunt when hit. When you attack me, I have a 60% chance to taunt the enemy for 2 turns, which gives a bunch of stuff. I'm sorry, you can go ahead and turn that off now. But that was some of the coolest stuff for me as a nerd my whole life. As someone who loved The Walking Dead, I now have a character in a Walking Dead video game. Since then, I've left that game, and the team that, like, company still owns the game. We still work regularly with them. I have 8 years of working on that game knowledge, which when you're in the business, people come and go. Just like if you worked at McDonald's or Burger King, you know how to make hamburgers. They're different hamburgers, but I'm an expert on this hamburger. So I can help these new people to learn about the hamburgers and how they were made and the history of all of it. So that knowledge of the game that I had for years got me a job in the gaming industry. And for nerds who think it's so far away, LinkedIn is where I applied. It's that easy. I have a new career that I'm 3 years deep in. I work for the player experience team on one of the most popular mobile games out right now with one of the biggest IPs on earth. That is, it feels so good to love what I do every day and not be afraid of losing my job, because the people I work with, like I'm being that leadership training I'm talking about. I'm getting that now. I'm a senior member of my team and I'm overseeing a couple of folks. Like, that's new for me, but I'm being instructed and taught and coached on how to do that, which is something new for me. What year is this? At 45 years old. So life isn't over. You know, remember those people who say it's never too late? Here's me in my second phase of life, had the pandemic, which changed for a lot of people. A lot of people brought up a new hobby. I'm starting my side grind or whatever it was. That turned into something new for me. And it actually has helped my family, because without that, I wouldn't be sitting in this house right now, working from home every day on a project that I love, talking about things that I enjoy every day. Um, it's not too late. Whatever you think when you're like, it's over, if it's not.
Yeah. You
I,
you'd
I,
mentioned something pretty powerful that I had thought about in the past as well, and that is like, how many millions of dollars does it take to run this radio station, to pay the 120-ish people that work in this building, and how many creators are out there that do millions and millions more impressions and reach and views just by themselves. And that was one of my goals on the back end of my career. There was, I would love to come back and be like, hey, reached 20 million this month by myself. You're paying all of these people in this building to get minuscule YouTube numbers. I just looked today on one of the biggest properties in that building. And it is sad when me, as a guy who makes videos about reef tanks, the nichiest of niche, like we're talking aquariums, freshwater is like the thing. I think saltwater owns like maybe 20% of the aquarium market. And then you're talking about people who keep coral. So you're getting even deeper into that niche. I mean, we average probably in the neighborhood of like 10 to 20,000 views per video that we put up, and some will go even bigger than that. Going on any of those radio station websites and looking at YouTube is like, how is this, how? And when you can reach more people from your basement, just sitting in front of a microphone and giving good information about whatever you're talking about, it's so bizarre to me that it still exists as it does in a lot of places. But yeah, you can reach a hell of a lot more people by doing other things, for sure. And I think radio shot itself in the foot over the years too, in that way, especially with the bigger companies. The biggest radio company has control of all of its Facebook pages. So they'll just nonstop, just shoving information down these Facebook pages down, like, and you'll go to any one of these properties on their Facebook page, and it'll be like 1 like, 2 likes, no likes. Then you've got a local thing that you're trying to promote, 11 likes. Nobody sees it anymore because there's been so much content shoved down these pipes that they're
Squashed.
all clogged.
Yeah.
Some Drano up in there. You need to give the power back to the local markets. Oh, wait, there's nobody in the local markets.
Right.
So you see where this is all going.
Yeah. That we're living with our mistakes at this point and trying to make it up. I'm sure that some folks would say, "Oh, the pandemic did it," or the lack of live events, or people just don't go to concerts like they used to." But also, you fucked up.
Yeah.
It's there. Apologies, but like, I know as an adult, I've made mistakes. This is me saying I might have done it wrong. I'm open to hear more. Like, when our podcast post radio has better success than some of the things we did when we had a job that paid us to do it, you can tell the content means something, and you can tell like the connection to people that folks like you and I made is stronger than any piped in, not local situation that they're going, and they're just gonna keep losing the foothold that they have on that market. And maybe that's part of the design. Maybe that's like, I always had those thoughts like, no, if we lose more, then they can file bankruptcy and they get out of debt, right? Like, I don't know. This might be a personal. I'm very sorry if this hurts. If the White Sox keep losing, right? Like they'll get good rookies, maybe.
Yeah, like
Uh,
higher draft order. Yeah.
yeah, but are they losing on purpose? Maybe they're losing on purpose. Hey, radio, are you losing on purpose? It's time to maybe stop. But I don't care anymore. I feel bad for all the people that I care about, that I know are passionate like you and I were, that are just getting stomped upon by corporate red tape and the garbage that stands in the way of artists making art. I don't care if you think that's a pompous thing to say. Every one of you who is out there willing to put yourself on a stage in front of a camera and turn lights on to think anybody has something to hear there is a performer, and you are doing this for more than just a paycheck. But please don't let that paycheck be the extent of you feeling like that's your value, because there's more. There's way more. And I think this is probably before we wrap this episode. It was just earlier this year that you were wrapped up. We talked a little bit about you taking a vacation and then you being let go, but I don't want to wrap up this episode without the end cap of actually Remy's exit. Is there anything there that we haven't talked about, or anything you wanted to say before we head toward the next chapter?
I just remember getting a text message during the show from the boss who was like, "Hey, come to my office before you leave." And I was like, "Casey, this is it." She's like, "No, it's not. No, it's not." And I was like, "This doesn't happen. This doesn't ever happen. This is
I
it."
might have got the same text actually. Now that
Yeah.
now that you, yeah.
Come see me after your show. Yeah. So that was that. Um it wasn't as sterile as Chicago, which was nice. I will say that. Like there was conversation that happened. I think that it was done in a good way. Like no hard feelings when it comes to that. Like I get it. At the end of the day, there's just not money.
Mhm.
And I think the biggest question that I got after everything was said and done, well, what's next? Where are you going next? And I was like, I'm not interested in going anywhere next. I don't want to go. I got kids. They're in a great school system. I love the area that we're in. We're in a house. I don't want to buy a house. Buying a house right now, I am sorry if you're on the market,
Man, I just
but
did it. It sucks.
yeah, I'm locked into whatever 3%
Joey,
interest rate
shut up,
that I
you son
got
of
way
a
back
bitch.
in
Shut
the day.
up, man. Remember when we were reading them commercials and we were like 1.9? Oh, brother. I'm like up at 6 or some shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So there's, I mean, and I think, and I might have mentioned this in the first episode too, but my biggest thing is I just want to maintain status quo for the kids. And if that means me ending up in an Uber or delivering for Amazon or whatever I have to do in the meantime to make that work, so be it, but like you said, being on the other side of this thing is it's so freeing. You don't have to go to these unpaid events all the time and waste your gas to pay for parking. And I've told people this too. Like I've saved so much money not going to all of the places that we had to go for remotes and concerts and all these different events that we had. It was so great to look down at my odometer on my car, and 9 times out of 10, any other time I look up at that oil change sticker and I'd be like at least 3 or 4,000 miles over when that said to go. I've been within for like the past like 4 or 5 months now. It's been fantastic because I haven't gone anywhere. The only driving I've done is, to places that I want to go, like family, friends, places like that. But I got in the question, are you going to do radio again? And I just said, this should kind of be the sentence that any radio personality takes from this point on, especially if you've got a family. But I am not going to move my family, learn the street names, how to say Gravoy or Spady or any of those things, adopt the sports teams, learn the culture, learn a new environment, put my kids in new schools, all the things, only to be told that they can't pay me anymore and just be stuck there. So we're here, we're established, and I think I can safely say that I'm with this podcast, especially, that I'm done with how radio works, because I just can't put myself and my family through that stress, because they feel it too. Oh my gosh, the yelling. Oh my gosh, the stress. I'm like a totally different person after all this. Um,
You and me both, brother.
yeah,
Totally different, and I never realized it.
you don't. I don't know. I don't know how to really sum this up other than like I'm. It sucks in the moment. But it sucks even more being in the industry and worrying every single day. Who's got the one up? Who's going to replace me? Who's going to go here? For some reason, the staff knows about cuts before the cuts happen. 9 times out of 10, that's happened. Oh, cuts are happening soon. How did you find out? Oh, because someone at the top is telling an employee, and the employee is telling all the other employees that cuts are going to be happening. That should not happen. That should
There's a
not
lot
happen.
of that should not happen going on in some of the buildings we've worked in, for sure.
So, in summation, as I'm exiting, I'm, kind of expecting all this to have happened.
And I got to be honest, you can't feel comfortable too, even when you've been in our position where we were the first time we were in St. Louis, when you couldn't be more successful. We had ratings, we had revenue, and they still kicked us in the dick and on the way. You know what I'm saying? And put something else on. How are you 100% successful, achieving all your goals, and then beaten with a stick? It's insane to feel like, to expect. Like I'm to expect you to go, yeah, I'll do that again. Let me go back. Let me back at them, coach.
Yeah.
They're just chewing through talent and
Mhm.
destroying people who could really soar. But they've been beaten down by this business. Hi,
Yeah.
I'm one of them.
Mhm. And it sucks because there's a lot of great people that we've worked with that are still in radio, and I don't want to discount that at all. Like,
Same.
see it through. As long as you're having fun and as long as they're paying you, then freaking go for it. Do the thing, but just know that we'll be waiting for you at the gates. Like, hey,
And they're pearly. They are
welcome.
pearly
They're
gates.
very pearly.
They are pearly. Yep. It's nice. It's nice. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters here, like you think it does. I feel like in this, these moments is where I chose life over a career in radio. I remember we had those big aspirations, and you were like, I want to go on Dancing with the Stars, and we want to be on the news, and we want to host all this stuff. But what it takes to be that person is inhuman. It is a sacrifice of who you are and your time and effort in your own mental health, and just a gambit. You're just running the crucible of constantly being beat down by people about your performance, about where you could go, your own self-doubt, seeing what other people are doing. It's just it's not a healthy place to be. And I hope that everybody who is still there like can compartmentalize it well enough to have like some quality mental health.
Yeah.
Because I think when that ended is the first time I started, like, like I said, I put my head down 2010 chasing that dream. I put it up in 2021 and looked around like, it's pretty nice out here.
Mm-hmm. I imagined Kimmy Schmidt coming out of the hole.
Yes. Oh, what a great show too.
Or like the guys coming out of the biodome or biosphere. Like, oh, there's like a whole world out here.
There is. And if we can provide anything, it's perspective from the other side, that life after radio is okay.
Yeah.
Don't let that vampire suck all the blood out of you before you lose your humanity.
If Ryan Seacrest is a real human, I would love to read his book someday, his tell-all book, because I feel like that type of person, he's the one guy that comes to mind when you say like you got to sacrifice everything to do the show business thing. If you want to do the Wheel of Fortune, the morning show, the syndication, like you don't have a family, you don't, or they hate you,
I mean,
never home, all the things, like you're always having to, like, this thing always has to be working on. And the thing that helps that are drugs.
Yeah.
I can imagine that there would be a lot of that going on at the upper echelon of the radio industry, and it's
I
just
know it's happening. Yeah,
it's
for
just
sure.
it's not healthy. And we can beat this horse even more, but it's nice on the other side. So
It really is. So yeah, vote of confidence, and I think that this is where we can kind of start wrapping up this episode. Unless there's, like I said, anything else you want to go into before we dive in, because I think in the next episode we'll talk a lot about our learnings from 11 years of this. Like, what advice would we have? Anything else you want to say before I start down the path of the teases for the next episode? Because that's where we're at here. Not sure if anybody puts together structure or not, but this is very early radio stuff we're working with here. So yeah, like, we want to talk a little bit about those post. Well, let's have a post-mortem
yeah,
about this. So, what did we learn from our 11 plus year adventure together in big market radio, working in big cities and high stress situations? What are our teachable takeaways? Should you pursue a career in broadcasting, in radio, and some free consulting for radio companies also coming up in the next episode? We'll talk a little bit about that stuff. And a lot of the content we didn't cover. You know, you mentioned a few things here. You mentioned the mermaid thing. I just made a note to pull that up. Mentioned when I taught you how to play Fortnite. I feel like that was a like crossover of where I wish we really could have operated. Like, man, what a fun thing that was for me. And I feel like whether or not it was like 100% authentic from you, you looked like it felt like you enjoyed it. We'll get into it in the next episode. Some of the stuff we may have missed, but this has pretty much completed the journey of Mason and Remy on terrestrial radio here. Because we're up to date now in January of 2024 when Remy was kind of shown the door, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
was let go. Gone.
Maybe we'll talk about when we got together for coffee and kind of had the idea for this whole thing too in the next episode. Really appreciate everybody taking the time to listen to this. I know it's long. There's a lot to talk about. But it's super great, again, to be able to chat with you, Remy, and awesome to hear everybody chiming in on these moments that they took part in, whether it was a thing at a concert or a float trip or an event or a call on the air, whatever it was. This has been a very cool trip down memory lane. We're not done yet. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye-bye then.